everybody, I'm Kate Cast, and welcome to our edition of Let's Talk About, and welcome to the latest installment of To Infinity War and Beyond. While long-running franchises are exciting, what keeps the MCU going is the constant introduction of new heroes, and we get more than most people were probably ready for with Eternals. Thousands of years ago, celestial beings sent 10 superpowered individuals to Earth to protect it from a ravenous species known as the Deviants. As time goes on, these protectors grow fond of this planet, some making it their proper home. But once a secret from their past threatens to destroy the Earth, they must reunite to decide this planet's fate and once again become the Eternals. Not gonna lie guys, this was a tough one. Due to a very demanding work schedule over the holidays, I missed seeing Eternals in theaters, which is why this review didn't happen until after the movie came out on Disney+. During that time, I was hearing conflicting things about Eternals, to say the least. It is currently the lowest rated MCU film on Rotten Tomatoes. You're off the hook, Thor the Dark World. Yet, there were still people who enjoyed it. Even when I was trying to avoid discussion on this movie, mostly for the sake of spoilers, I was absorbing all this reception. So when it was time for me to finally sit down and watch this movie, I was waiting for it to sway me in one direction or another. And in the end, I kind of wound up somewhere in the middle, I think. Alright, enough stalling. Let's just break it down into the three major talking points. It's the only way I'm going to be able to dissect this massive film without this video being, 40 minutes long. The story. Decent concept, execution could have been better. The first half or so of the movie indulges in the kind of ideas around millennia-old beings living on Earth for thousands of years that we've come to expect. Bonding with a species far more primitive than them, becoming a part of human mythology throughout the years, watching in awe and horror at our advancements and flaws, and so on. About how this team sworn to protect civilization on Earth suddenly found themselves isolated with their purpose for being there presumably completed, eventually going their separate ways, whether it was sticking to isolated missions or building lives for themselves. I feel like we really meet the Eternals when we see what they decided to do with all this time on Earth. Then we have another opportunity for exploration and challenge with the major reveal at the hour mark that what they believed they were there to achieve was a lie, making them all question their own sense of selves in the face of having to decide what to do about these revelations that have world-ending consequences. There have been a lot of heroes questioning if what they're doing is the right thing in the MCU before, but this is definitely the biggest obstacle in terms of scale. It's a really good start to the overall conflict of the film. However, where I think it falls apart is in the second half. Each reunion does take a moment to process this new information while deciding how to move forward, but to me, it doesn't feel like these revelations really play much of a part in the ultimate decision. Who these people were, who they thought they were, who they actually are, and how that shapes the choices they make should be woven into the ultimate choice here and the part they play in deciding humanity's fate. Maybe it's just because I'm a massive Doctor Who fan and that entire franchise has basically been built around a similar premise with decades of material to explore it in, but I don't know. Eternals has a lot of interesting conflict and a diverse group of characters to explore those questions with, but for every opportunity they reach for, there's another that they either slightly miss or ignore altogether to focus on something else. There are some obstacles that get dropped completely that wouldn't have been that hard to not only see explored, but play a significant role in this conflict. The best example of this for me is easily the Deviants. Now I don't know about you, but when I watched this movie, I thought the reveal that both the Eternals and the Deviants were tools molded by Arishem and the Celestials who were expendable at their whim would lead to a mutual understanding between the two species. They may not be friends, but they have a common enemy, and it's not each other. But no, the Deviants still act like ravenous beasts for the rest of the movie. The history surrounding the Deviants makes it seem like we should sympathize with them, but the movie doesn't give us any real reason to do so. The Deviants have this revenge angle to them, but it never plays into the struggle the Eternals face in any meaningful way outside of a one-on-one with Thena. And even that's just another roadblock for them to punch during the climax. The idea of most of the Eternals choosing to interfere does make for a solid arc for the team. Deciding to take agency when they mostly did what they were told before, acting as observers who blasted alien creatures every now and then, is good character progression. But as we reach the climactic moment, it felt kind of I don't know, distant? I'm not really a big believer in the Marvel third act problem, but I really felt it in this one. All that said, this is a story you can go on about for a while, whether you thought it delivered on its potential or not, just because there's so much there and the execution is wildly different in terms of success depending on which subplot you're talking about. The characters. Another mixed bag, but I could easily see most people walking out of this with a favorite Eternal, all of them equipped with different powers and personalities. Now, I usually love digging deep into the characters, but since we essentially have 10 heroes and I'd say 7 main characters, that ain't gonna fly this time. So, lightning round. Also, just a fair warning, there's a lot of character and actor names in here, so I'm probably gonna mess some of them up. I apologize. If you've been here for a while, you know I'm just really bad with names. Makari, played by Lauren Ridloff. Arguably the Eternal who's in the movie the least, but she makes the most of her time because she really left an impression on me. Perhaps the most notable thing about Makari is that she's our first deaf hero in the MCU, played by a deaf actress. But that's not where her personality ends. She seems to be the most isolated of the group, but is mischievous and outgoing when she is around people, especially her team, and even has a small romance going on. Like I said, she gets the least amount of focus, but with Makari, a little seems to go a long way. Druid, played by Barry Keoghan. Druid develops a growing frustration with the Eternals' inaction in human affairs a couple thousand years into this whole mess, and at one point interferes with a war, which is a pretty intense and well-executed moment as he breaks all of the rules and heads off on his own path. The next time we see him, he's still watching over the descendants of those tribes. So he resents the Eternals for not meddling with human affairs, but doesn't meddle with any other human affairs except for this one group of people in the Amazon? Huh. You know, the ethics of his mind control is debatable for sure, but I can think of a few other human incidents that could have used his powers. If he had said that protecting this one group of humans from themselves and the outside world was enough for him or something, it would be fine, but as it is, it kind of lessens the impact of his so-called betrayal. Well, at least his romance with Makari is kind of cute. Short, but I bought it. Sprite, played by Leah McHugh, the only Eternal not to take the form of an adult who can create lifelike illusions. Her powers lead to some clever strategies and a lot of cool visual moments. Sprite gets a lot of the more entertaining moments in the film until the last third when she betrays the group, because she loves Icarus and wants to stay by his side, which was weird. I mean, I know age-wise it's not weird, but as a dumb human, it's really hard for me to look past the fact that biologically, it's weird. But that's something that's kind of interesting about Sprite. She's sort of the darker side to the Peter Pan story, portraying the difficulties that come with being young forever. As much as I don't think they did a great job showing why Sprite would be envious of human life, I really felt her sorrow when she expressed how much her life can never be like theirs or even the fellow Eternals. I'll be very curious to see what her life will be like now that she's human, which is hilarious because it's obvious they realize that despite the character being immortal, the actress is going to grow up and fast. Now, if this becomes a franchise, they don't have to worry about that. Good work around there, guys. Phastos, played by Brian Tyree Henry. Phastos is a technological wizard, wanting to guide humanity to a brighter tomorrow with technology. However, that desire is crushed when he sees what humanity is capable of with such advancement. Of all the things I thought I'd see in the MCU, an immortal alien on the remains of Hiroshima was not on the list. I mean, it's effective, but damn. That's really the only word I can muster for it. Learning this, you think Phastos will be all for ending the human race for something greater than them, but as it turns out, he found happiness on Earth with his family. Finally, some on-screen LGBT representation in the MCU outside of a line of dialogue that could be easily cut out of international releases. And it's so wholesome. Stuff like this is why it's tough for me to dislike this movie. So Phastos goes from being enthralled by humanity's potential to being disenchanted by the destructive nature of advancement to finding solace in a simpler corner of human life that makes him genuinely happy, and that's why he decides to get back in the saddle and save them all. He probably has the most character development of the group in my eyes. Right next to Thena, played by Angelina Jolie. Yeah, I can't believe they got her either. A strong warrior able to manifest weapons in combat, but her distinguishing characteristic is that she suffers from some kind of mental episodes, losing control of herself and attacking her teammates. Because of that, she becomes a liability to their mission. But before they can put her down like Old Yeller, another member of the team, Gilgamesh, played by Don Lee, agrees to look after her. Now, Thena's condition does tie into the mid-movie twist, as apparently it's her recalling all her past lives that Arishem wiped from their memories. Her condition does cause problems in the team's journey, but weirdly, there's no moment of her trying to recall these memories, fighting so hard to break through. Really take in what Arishem and the Celestials took from all of them. Maybe even using Druid's mental powers to guide her through that recollection, I don't know. I was waiting for a moment like that, but it never came. Still, Thena's struggle to keep herself together is a strong and persistent obstacle throughout the story, especially once Gilgamesh is killed. Her support system is gone, and her already tilted world has been turned completely upside down. It's not something she ever completely overcomes, but it's something she grows to control in times of crisis. I'm not gonna say it's a perfect allegory for dealing with actual, persistent mental illness, though I do hope someone more qualified examines Thena's story, but for the purpose of this movie, in a sea of half-realized ideas and character arcs, Thena's is definitely one of the most effective and inspiring of the group. Compare that to Kingo, played by Kumail Nanjiani, who I thought was going to be my favorite member of the team. He's certainly the most charismatic, and has my personal favorite path among all the Eternals for molding his life on Earth. He became a Bollywood star. I love the idea of an egotistical, immortal being posing as a family of actors down the generations. That's brilliant. Nanjiani makes the most of every moment he's on screen, adding that extra bit of entertainment to the segments reuniting and recruiting the rest of the Eternals that would have been a tedious process otherwise. It's also because of him that we have an actual human character tagging along on this mission to decide humanity's fate. Karun, played by Harish Patel. This is a role that definitely could have been expanded on for reasons I'll go into in a sec, but nothing against Karun himself. We appreciate Karun on this channel. Kingo has a lot going for him, especially on an entertainment level. However, he loses a lot of points from me by playing no part whatsoever in the final act. I'm not kidding. He chooses a side in this debate by not choosing a side and just leaves. And he never comes back. We don't see him again until the epilogue. For the guy who brings along the only member of the species they're about to obliterate if they don't do anything, he sure seems okay with bailing and never having to make a choice when the chips are down. They just did it without him. Teamwork? Despite that really lame decision though, I did enjoy Kingo's time in this movie, and I hope to see him again in the MCU's future. I mean, if they made a Disney Plus series just about his acting career, I'd personally be okay with that. Oh, Selma Hayek's in this movie too. The marketing was very excited about that, but she dies in the first 20 minutes, and there's enough characters to talk about, so who cares? Alright, two more. Arguably our two main characters, Cersei and Icarus, played by Gemma Chan and Richard Madden respectively. To be completely frank, I think a lot of the movie's faults on my end come down to how much I did not care about these two in particular. In defense of Cersei, she does have seeds of an engaging idea that could grow into a solid arc. Out of all the Eternals, she seems to have the closest connection to humanity. She spends the most time with them during their early years, she becomes a history professor, and she has a human boyfriend. One thing I think the MCU does really well is having a little go a long way, especially the movies that have bigger casts. A glance, a gesture, or a line of dialogue can say what most movies would dedicate a scene to. That's what they do with Cersei in the beginning, and it's a good start, but either because the story swallows it up rather than working alongside it and Cersei's new position as leader, or because there is so much more time to work with than usual, Cersei's contribution to the story feels kind of neglected despite having to make the big choices here. I think Cersei's story could have benefited a lot from keeping the human connection present. Some of the Eternals have humans they care about, but none of them make a significant contribution on a story or character level to the larger conflict of what to do about the Celestial. Having Cersei's boyfriend Dane come along on this quest would have filled this role. That seemed to be what they were hinting at, as he's the first one on the outside to question the Eternals' actions, but I guess people don't want Kit Harington in a supporting role in the MCU. Oh well. That said, I kinda respect that they cast Jon Snow in a Marvel movie and basically gave him a throwaway part. Even though I know it's very heavily implied he'll be far more important in a future film, film, for this movie, that took guts. Instead, we have her ex, Icarus, someone anchoring her to her past to challenge the belief she's been living by for thousands of years. Because, we don't have enough of those around. I do like that Icarus is the villain of the group, the one unmoved by these millennia spent on Earth, sticking to their mission to awaken the Celestial no matter what, even betraying his teammates to do so. If Eternals has a villain, it's Icarus, and while I don't particularly like him as a character, that's a good wrench to throw into this team. Reportedly, a big influence of Icarus's characterization was Superman from Man of Steel, which makes a lot of sense when you give it even a passing thought, right down to his body language. I do not have a stake in the DCEU fight, but if you want to turn that influence into a villain, I'm not gonna say it's a bad choice. The only other significant thing about Icarus is that his story ends when he fails his mission, realizes what he's done, and flies into the sun, killing himself. On the one hand, it's a pretty shocking moment, but then you think about what they're going for, and it doesn't quite work. Because the mythical Icarus flew too close to the sun because he was too ambitious, but this Icarus is the exact opposite of that. He kept his feet planted very firmly on the ground, despite the fact he can fly. You know what I mean? Cersei and Icarus, especially Cersei, had the potential for solid character arcs that could work alongside the larger narrative. Instead, they get swept under the rug so they can play their parts in the story, which makes them both seem bland. The others have the luxury of having their character arcs only mildly relate to the conflict at hand, and still, for the most part, work. Sadly, these two do not, and thus, for me, their stories fell short. The production value. Okay, this is an unquestionable win. You can tell this is a Chloe Zhao production. Gorgeous, on-location filming with some truly beautiful shot composition. Made even better by getting to see several eras of civilization through this lens. It's the area where this movie feels the most alive. They even keep up this excellent style with the Eternals' powers, with this circular golden accent to all their abilities and technology. It's artistic and unique, and I loved it. The only place where I'd say the production design falls short is with the Deviants. They all look like generic video game monsters, these masses of gray, tentacle blandness. Even when one of them becomes more human, their features aren't distinct enough to leave an impression. What I'm realizing here is I'm really not a fan of the Deviants.
Go back to Kingdom Hearts where you came from, you fucking freak.
Other than that, I don't really have any criticism towards this movie from a visual standpoint. It's breathtaking, and the promotional material was almost mesmerizing in how different it looked from most Marvel movies. But in action, it still sits very comfortably alongside the other installments in this expansive cinematic universe. It made me want to spend more time in this corner of the universe just to take in the atmosphere, alongside what potential I saw in the story and characters, even amongst its many imperfections. Overall, Eternals is a really mixed bag, but in my opinion leans more towards good. Taking it all in, it becomes a big, garbled mess of ideas that's tough to comprehend at times. Kind of like this review. I was really having trouble articulating something meaningful with this one, guys. I'm usually better at this. I'm the girl who defends Iron Man 2, for Christ's sake. No movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, even the most hated, is without merit, and that's true for Eternals as well. The direction and cinematography is gorgeous. The cast is a fantastic and diverse lineup of well-personified characters, and of all the things you could say about this movie, you can't say it's not ambitious. That might be what led to its downfall, though. It's trying to do too much. Juggling a humongous cast of brand new characters, giant existential questions with universe-altering answers, and the most sequel bait I've seen in a Marvel movie in a long time. I never thought a Harry Styles cameo would be our mid-credit tease, but there you go. As a result, we wind up with a lot of promising concepts, questions, and character arcs that go half realized. It's weird. At 2 hours, this would have felt long, but at 2.5, it almost feels too short. There have been a lot of comparisons between this movie and Marvel's failed TV project, The Inhumans. Now, from what I've seen of it, Eternals is not Inhumans bad, not even close. But I think this group could have benefited from the miniseries approach that The Inhumans were given. Almost every reunion with one of the team members could easily be an episode of a TV show, giving them more time to dive into the big dilemmas, how time has changed each team member, what coming together really means to them, the whole 9 yards. I don't think these are things the writers weren't interested in tackling, but I think they try to do too much at once while keeping in the traditional Marvel format, and the end product definitely suffers for it. However, I hope the reception towards this film doesn't hurt the possibility for this franchise to continue. Right now, the story feels incomplete, and if there's one thing that can improve Eternals in the long run, it's more time. I would love to see a sequel to Eternals because I believe there is something strong, different, and even a little compelling here. They just need the chance to fully realize it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Definitely let me know what you thought of this movie in the comments below. That's why the series is called Let's Talk About. I want to give a very special thanks to my patrons who help support my content, including David L. Sproul, Sebastian Canito of Cinemageddon Reviews, Chelsea A. Crandall, Hawk Hero, Crowless, Jinx Productions, and Wait in the Wings. If you'd like to join these fine people in supporting my content while getting cool exclusive perks, you can check out my Patreon page at the link in the description, as well as my other social media if you'd like to check out any of those. Thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you guys. Ow! What was that?